The med bay aboard the Seraphine Star Station was a place of quiet sterility. White walls hummed with soft energy fields, and the air smelled faintly of disinfectant and ionized mist. Rows of hovering autodocs glided on railings overhead, ready to drop down at the first sign of a trauma alarm. It was, in short, an environment designed to be calm and predictable, precisely the kind of place where nothing surprising was ever supposed to happen until the human arrived. Nurse Relia of the Vishari prided herself on her composure. Her species had evolved on the floating atolls of Vishar Prime, where storms could sweep you into the sea with no warning. To survive, Vishari learned to remain calm no matter what occurred around them. That skill had made her an exceptional nurse. Even in moments of chaos, her four slender arms moved like synchronized machinery. Her frilled head crest never so much as twitching. She had tended to molten-skinned Drekker who had caught fire mid-shift. She had patched holes in the exoskeletons of wounded Drath warriors, while plasma fire roared around her. Once, she had even resuscitated an Earl whose body was 90% liquid. There was, Relia believed, nothing left in the galaxy that could truly shock her. Then came Sergeant Marcus Hale. He was brought in on a grav stretcher, escorted by two security officers who looked more rattled than he did. The incident report was sparse. Cargo hatch malfunction on Dock 47. Heavy impact trauma. Relia read the words without expression until she saw the crate that had supposedly fallen on him, listed at 9 metric tons. By all reason. The human should have been a smear of carbon paste. But Marcus wasn't paste. He was, grinning. Blood streaked down from a gash in his forehead. His lip was split. And one arm hung at an odd angle, but he lifted his head as the stretcher glided into the trauma bay and said cheerfully, "Afternoon, Doc. I think the crate lost." The other medtechs murmured in disbelief. Relia silenced them with a glance and stepped forward. Up close, the human smelled faintly of iron and sweat, sharp and alive. She passed a multispectrum scanner over his chest. The results appeared on her wrist. Hallie. Her frills twitched. Vitals. Stable, she murmured. Heart rate elevated, but functional. Blood pressure. Extreme. Bone fractures. Minimal. Her black eyes widened slightly. "This is impossible. Human tough," Marcus said through his bleeding grin. "Human foolish," Relia replied without thinking, which earned a laugh from him and shocked herself. Vishari rarely joked, especially on duty. But something about his crooked smile seemed to pull unexpected reactions out of her. She focused, forcing her tone back into clinical precision. "We must conduct a full scan to locate hidden injuries. Do not move." "Wasn't planning to," Marcus said, settling back. She began the scan. Her lower arms positioned the field projector while her upper pair operated the holocontrols. Light swept down Marcus's body in a slow, shimmering wave. Data cascaded across the display: muscle density, bone alignment, microvascular flow. Everything was astonishingly intact, until the scan reached his lower body. The scanner emitted a sharp, almost accusatory beep. A red warning symbol blinked. Unidentified swelling detected. Relia froze. "What?" She rechecked the calibration, ran the pass again. The same result appeared. A warm, pulsing mass between the human's lower limbs. Larger than any nearby tissue, marked as abnormal growth, her frills stiffened in alarm. She had treated venomous gland ruptures, parasitic cysts, even explosive reproductive bladders, but she had never seen this configuration. "Sergeant Hale," she said slowly, "there appears to be abnormal inflammation between your lower limbs." Marcus blinked. My what now?" She pointed to the glowing red anomaly on the display. The protrusion, large, warm, pulsing. Marcus stared for a moment and then made a strangled sound halfway, between laughter and horror. "Oh boy." Relia stepped back slightly, ready to activate containment field protocols. "Is it fatal?" Marcus buried his face in his hand. "No, definitely not." But Relia could see the monitors registering his rising heart rate. Whatever it was, the human was reacting emotionally. Her training screamed at her. Uncontrolled swelling could indicate internal hemorrhage, infection, or worse. Her medbay was not supposed to allow unpredictable biological crises, and yet here I sat, smiling nervously at her. For the first time in years, Relia felt something she had forgotten how to feel. She was shocked. Riley's frills were still rigid with alarm as she summoned additional medical staff. The medbay's soft chimes echoed as two Drath medtechs scuttled in, their chitinous limbs clattering on the polished floor. The Drath were towering insectoids with elongated carapaces and twitching antennae. They moved with precise efficiency, clicking to each other in their native language. When they caught sight of the scan hovering above Marcus's lower body, both froze mid-stride, mandibles gaping, thermal spike, rising pressure. Unstable tissue expansion, one hissed in alarm. Could rupture internally, the other added. Already reaching for a containment module, Marcus sat up slightly, alarmed by their tone. Rupture? What rupture? Hey, what's going on? Relia kept her voice calm, though her frills trembled at the edges. We have detected a mass of unknown origin. It is swelling rapidly. It may be parasitic or a pressure cyst from blunt trauma. We must neutralize it. Neutralize. Marcus echoed, his voice cracking. The first Drath activated a micro-laser scalpel, its tip glowing a surgical blue. Recommend immediate excision before systemic failure begins. Hold on excision, Marcus yelped, bolting upright so fast that every monitor around him screamed. He slapped his hands protectively over his lower body. Nobody is cutting anything off down there. The medtechs froze, the scalpel humming in midair. Relia tilted her head, confused. Sergeant Hale, are you implying this growth is intentional? Marcus's face flushed crimson. It's not a growth. You are denying the scan's reading? Relia pressed. She was trying to be gentle, but confusion leaked into her tone. It's supposed to be there? Marcus blurted. Silence fell like a dropped gravity plate. The Jarath medtechs exchanged rapid mandible clicks, utterly bewildered. Your species naturally develop external tumors? One asked in disbelief. Not tumors, Marcus said, visibly dying inside from embarrassment. It's part of the male reproductive system. Relia blinked slowly. Her forehands lowered. Reproductive? Yes, Marcus muttered. Reproductive. Relia glanced at the scan again, then back at Marcus, then back at the glowing red mass pulsing on the hala. That protrusion is used for creating offspring? Marcus gave the tiniest, mortified nod. One of the Jarath hissed in horror, clacking his claws over his face. External reproductive organ. Exposed during combat duty? This is biological madness. Do you deploy it? Relia asked before she could stop herself. Marcus groaned and buried his face in his hands. Please don't use the word deploy. This design is extremely vulnerable, the other Jarath muttered, horrified. A single low-velocity projectile could disable the human permanently. Thanks, Marcus, said through clenched teeth. I am painfully aware. Relia, realizing the Drath were about 2 comments away from fainting, dismissed them with a sharp flick of her hand. They left, muttering about how humans should come with hazard labels, their clicking fading down the corridor. Relia remained, standing a respectful distance away as Marcus sat slumped on the edge of the medbed, still holding his face. The monitors around him beeped softly, tracking his rising blood pressure. You are certain this is natural? She asked finally, her voice softer now, more curious than alarmed. Yes, Marcus said, not looking up. Completely normal. Happens to every human male. Relia considered this. Her people's reproductive process involved releasing spore sacs into the ocean air once every few years. The Jarath secreted enzyme clusters into sealed communal pods. Almost every known intelligent species had external, easily removable reproductive carriers objects they could abandon or regrow. But humans, apparently, carried their entire reproductive capacity externally, yet permanently attached to their core body. It defied every logical design principle she knew. Her black eyes narrowed slightly. Humans are very strange. Thanks, Marcus muttered, still red-faced. We try. For a long moment, neither spoke. The quiet hum of the medbay returned, filling the awkward void. Relia studied him with new eyes. The strange swelling that had triggered her panic was not an injury, not a parasite, not a cyst. It was simply part of him, an integral, exposed, unarmored part of his being. She thought of how he had been crushed under a 9-ton crate and laughed about it. How he had walked into her medbay, bleeding and fearless. Now she understood why his reaction to this misunderstanding was so much stronger than to his injuries. After the incident, Relia found herself unable to stop thinking about the human. She had seen many strange things in her medical career, but never something so contradictory. Humans carried what appeared to be one of their most vital reproductive organs, externally unarmored, and yet they willingly hurled themselves into dangerous environments without hesitation. It did not make sense. It gnawed at her. So, on her next off-cycle, she requested access to the Terran Medical Archive through the Concord's Xenobiology Network. The files that arrived on her datapad were vast tens of thousands of entries on human anatomy, physiology, behavior, and psychology. She began reading, perched at her workstation, with two of her forearms propping up her chin. What she discovered left her, frills rising higher with every page. Humans were described as resilient mammalian, omnivores from a Class 12 death world. Their skin, while soft, regenerated rapidly. Their bones were not solid like Vishari crystal bone, yet they healed faster than most species' carapaces. Their immune systems were described as chaotically aggressive, attacking nearly anything that entered the body. And then there was their reproductive system. Relia reread the diagrams several times, certain she must be misunderstanding them. The structure she had assumed was a traumatic swelling was, in fact, a normal part of male anatomy. It contained millions of fragile reproductive cells and delicate membranes. Hanging outside the main body cavity in an exposed pouch of skin, it was, from a medical standpoint, a disaster waiting to happen. Yet somehow, humanity not only survived, but thrived. Even more baffling, they did not seem to fear this vulnerability. Humans were renowned across the Concord for their ferocity in combat, their willingness to charge into battle, their reckless courage. They fought predators on their homeworld for sport. They leaped from cliffs with only thin fabric to slow their descent. They wrestled each other for fun. Relia's fingers tightened on her datapad. How does a species willingly risk such fragile biology? The answer came in an unexpected section of the archive's psychosocial analysis. Humans, it said, were pack-oriented to an extreme degree. They formed cooperative groups, from families to armies, that defended one another with absolute loyalty. Their instinct to protect their group often overrode their instinct for self-preservation. That was the key, she realized. Humans were not fearless because they were invulnerable. They were fearless because they trusted one another. The next day, Relia visited Marcus's medbay room. He was sitting upright, one arm in a flex cast, idly tossing a ration bar up and down with his other hand. "Hey, nurse," he said, flashing his crooked grin. "Come to poke me with more scanners?" "Not today," she replied, seating herself on a hoverstool nearby. "I have questions." "Oh no," he groaned. "About my anatomy again?" "About your species," she clarified. "I have reviewed your medical data. You carry a critical reproductive organ externally. It is highly vulnerable. Yet your species engages in frequent warfare. Why?" Marcus tilted his head as if she'd just asked why air was breathable. "Because sometimes you have to fight. But if you were struck there," she hesitated, glancing meaningfully toward his lower body, "your genetic legacy could end." "Yeah," Marcus admitted with a shrug. "But you can't spend your life worrying about what might get hurt." Relia blinked. "That is illogical, maybe," he said with a grin. "But humans don't fight just for ourselves. We fight for each other. For the people next to us. Makes the risk worth it." Relia went still. She had seen holovids of human squads dragging their wounded comrades through burning rubble. She had read reports of them holding defensive lines long after most species would retreat. Now she understood why. You protect one another. Even while your most fragile part is exposed, she murmured. That's humanity in a nutshell, Marcus said, smiling. We're breakable. But we don't break alone. Relia regarded him in silence for a long moment. She had thought humans reckless, perhaps even suicidal. But now she saw something different. Not madness, but faith. They trusted their allies to shield them, even when nature had left them seemingly defenseless. It was strangely beautiful. You are reckless, she said softly, but also courageous. Thanks, Marcus said, leaning back with an easy grin. Most people just call us crazy. Relia allowed the corners of her frilled mouth to curl. Upward, the closest her species came to smiling. Perhaps you are both, and for the first time. She thought she understood why humans survived in a galaxy that should have crushed. Then, the next few days passed in quiet routine, but something subtle had shifted in the med bay. Marcus remained under observation until his broken arm fully mended. And in that time, Relia found herself visiting him often. She told herself it was professional interest, monitoring recovery rates, testing his bone regrowth, measuring cellular repair, but deep down she knew it was something else. She was fascinated by him. Marcus greeted every visit with that same disarming grin, even when still bruised and aching. He cracked jokes as she changed his bandages. He teased her about how many arms she had, and she countered by teasing him about how few arms he had. Other patients dreaded treatment. Marcus made it feel like conversation. Yet beneath his humor, Relia sensed an unwavering strength, not just of body, but of will. It was the kind of strength that no scanner could measure. One cycle, while the medbay lights dimmed to simulate night. Relia stayed behind after her shift and ran another scan of his injuries. The skeletal reconstruction in his arm was almost complete.
Oh.
The nanofracture lines closing with astonishing speed. You will be discharged in 2 cycles, she said. Reviewing the readout, your body repairs itself faster than our charts predicted. Perks of being human, Marcus said, flexing his casted arm slightly. We break easy, but we bounce back. Relia looked up from the scanner. I have studied many resilient species. The giraffe can survive limb loss. The drecker can burn and regrow skin within hours. But none of them laugh while injured. Marcus shrugged. We laugh because it helps. Pain's easier to carry when you don't carry it alone. Relia tilted her head. But you are alone here. Marcus gave her a small, softer smile. Not really. You're here, aren't you? The words caught her off guard. Her frills flushed pale violet, a Vishari sign of surprise. She had spent her life maintaining clinical detachment, but this human kept piercing through it without effort. He didn't just survive pain. He reached through it toward others. And then, in the middle of this quiet moment, the monitors suddenly blared. Relia's frills snapped erect. Marcus jerked upright as alarms flashed scarlet across the medbay wall. Emergency trauma incoming, the Audiobook announced. Severe crush injuries. Cardiac instability. 2 security drones burst through the medbay doors carrying a colliery cargo worker. Her exosuit crumpled around her body like broken glass. Relia leaped into motion instantly. All 4 arms danced over the trauma console, issuing commands. Audiobook limbs unfolded from the ceiling, sterile fields flared to life, and surgical lasers locked onto ruptured vessels. The colliery's vitals were plummeting. She's going into shock. Relia snapped. I need hands. I've got to, Marcus said. Already sliding off his bed. You are still healing, she began, but he had already reached her side. Bracing the patient's fractured thorax while Relia aligned the bone stabilizer, he worked without hesitation, ignoring the strain on his own injured arm. His hands were steady, his voice calm. Clamp that bleeder. She's losing pressure fast. Relia followed his lead. They moved in perfect tandem, her precise multi-armed efficiency meshing with his instinctive, intuitive speed. Within minutes, they stabilized the colliery's heart rhythm and sealed her crushed carapace. The Audiobook announced, vitals stabilized. Prognosis, recoverable. Relia exhaled slowly, tension draining from her shoulders. Marcus slumped back against the wall, sweat streaking his face, but grinning nonetheless. That, he panted, was teamwork. Rilia stared at him, not just because he had ignored his own injury to help, but because he had done it so naturally, without being asked, without fear. Without pause, you risked further damage to your arm, she said quietly. Worth it, Marcus replied simply. Couldn't just watch her die? Rilia studied him for a long moment, her black eyes reflecting the medbay lights. This was what she had read about. This was what the archives meant when they said humans placed their group above themselves, even wounded, even vulnerable. He had thrown himself into danger to save someone else. Rilia felt something stir inside, her warmth, quiet and deep. It was admiration, yes, but something more. A kind of reverence. Humans were fragile. Their biology was filled with design flaws, their vital parts exposed, their lives alarmingly short. The days following the incident in the medbay moved like ripples through still water, slow, expanding, and impossible to ignore. Lysera's discovery of the so-called swelling had caused a quiet storm within the station's administration. The initial whispers among the nurses had grown into heated debates among the medical officers. Cultural anthropologists had been summoned. Security had even been notified, though they quickly realized there was no threat involved, only a monumental misunderstanding between species. Despite the flurry of activity, Lysera had remained oddly calm. Not because she fully understood what she had seen, but because she had begun to understand something else, how little they actually knew about humans and about Daniel. Specifically, Daniel had been placed under temporary cultural quarantine, which was a polite way of saying he was confined to his quarters while the science teams scrambled to reinterpret all their data about human biology. Lysera, as the one who discovered the anomaly, was granted special visitation rights. She wasn't sure if it was because they trusted her judgment, or because they wanted her to report back any further unusual developments. She walked down the corridor to his room, clutching her medical data pad tightly against her chest. Her heart, if it could be called that, pulsed a steady azure through the thin skin of her throat, a telltale sign of nervous anticipation. Among her kind. When the door hissed open, Daniel was there, sitting cross-legged on his bunk, reading from a small holoslate. He looked up and smiled. Lysera, they send you to poke me with more scanners? She managed a soft laugh. No, not today. Today, I am here. As a friend, Daniel tilted his head. Friend, huh? I like that. For a while they talked about small things at first. The meals on the station, which he described as mostly edible, the differences between human sleep cycles and Trevelyan ones, and the absurd rumors that had spread after the incident. Daniel found them hilarious. Some believed humans were permanently in a state of pre-combat readiness due to the presence of their external reproductive organs. Others believed the swelling was a defensive gland that released toxins during mating. Lysera admitted that even she had once wondered if humans carried venom sacs, but as the laughter faded, a quieter tone settled between them. Why did you not react with shame? Lysera finally asked. When I saw it, many species are private about such things. Daniel set down his slate and thought, because I knew it wasn't your fault. You were just doing your job. And where I come from, being embarrassed about your biology doesn't make sense. It's just part of who we are. Lysera absorbed his words, feeling the weight behind them. Among her people, exposure of intimate anatomy was considered a deep violation. It carried punishments, taboos, and social scars that could last a lifetime. Yet Daniel had reacted not with anger or shame, but with humor. It struck her as profoundly. Human, you're kind or strange, she murmured, though there was warmth in her voice. We get that a lot, Daniel replied with a grin. In the following days, Lysera and Daniel worked together to create an official human anatomy brief for the station's medical staff. It was awkward at first translating human biological terms into Trevelyan medical code required a great deal of care, but gradually, the tension dissolved into curiosity and even admiration. Daniel explained how humans evolved as endurance predators, how their physiology was shaped by millions of years of survival against impossible odds. Lysera shared her species' healing techniques. Their advanced tissue regeneration methods that could close wounds in minutes. They were, in essence, trading the intimate secrets of their kinds, not in shame, but in trust. When the briefing was finally presented to the station council, the once fearful staff listened in stunned silence. What began as a scandalous misunderstanding had blossomed into a bridge between species. After the meeting, as the council dispersed, Daniel turned to Lysera and quietly said, "You know, none of this would have happened if you hadn't been brave enough to look past your fear." Lysera's throat glimmered a soft, bright blue, and none of it would have worked if you had not laughed instead of shouting. They stood for a moment. Two beings from opposite ends of the stars, united by the smallest of accidents and the greatest of intentions. In that moment, Lysera realized something profound. Humans were not just resilient in body, they were resilient in spirit too. Where other species built walls of fear, humans built bridges of understanding, even out of the most awkward misunderstandings imaginable. And for the first time since she'd touched that strange, mysterious swelling, Lysera felt no fear, only wonder.